viewers, those are the headlines in our top focus. Indirect talks between Israel and Hamas in Egypt have been described as positive so far, with discussions resuming today in Sharm el-Sheikh. The talks aim to implement a US-led peace plan focusing first on the release of Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has stated that Hamas is agreeing to things that are very important in the ongoing indirect negotiations with Israel. Listen in to what Trump had to say.
Do you have any red lines in terms of Hamas disarming and whatnot? Are there
no, I have red lines. If certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well, and I think Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important.
Meanwhile, Israel continues its offensive in Gaza with hundreds of thousands now evacuated, while humanitarian access remains limited. At the same time, the Israeli military has stated that a projectile was fired into southern Israel targeting the small settlement of Netiv Hasara. This projectile was fired from Gaza. Now, air raid sirens were activated according to the Israeli Defense Forces, which added that the rocket was fired from northern Gaza. So far, no injuries have been reported. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Cooper-Wasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Up until now, the tone and tenor that has been adopted in Egypt has been described by sources as positive. On the ground, they're optimistic about the diplomacy that is taking place, the negotiations that are taking place with Egyptian mediators who are now speaking to both the Israeli negotiators as well as Hamas. Do you think that Trump's slated time period of the first phase being implemented by the end of this week is a realistic goal that he set?
It's definitely a goal that we would like to see being met. It's if it's realistic, definitely it's a little bit optimistic, but we have to be optimistic in order to make progress, because otherwise we are going to go back to fighting. And we prefer to find a diplomatic solution to that. And if the Hamas is, according to President Trump, accepting all kinds of important steps, then maybe there is a reason to be optimistic.
Indeed, and it's been 2 years since the terrorist attack on the 7th of October 2023 that claimed the lives of countless innocent civilians who were at the music festival, 370 who had lost their lives over there, and countless others, children and elderly in Israel, some who are also taken hostage and remain hostage till this date. Vigils are being held on the ground. Meanwhile, we've tracked reports of a projectile being fired from northern Gaza towards southern Israel. Could you share what's happening on the ground, provide our viewers with a little more clarity as to what is taking place?
Well, a lot of things have taken place since October 7th, 2023. In Gaza itself, we are in the midst of a wide-scale operation that is determined to remove Hamas from power through diplomatic means or through military means. And we have caused Hamas a very severe damage, and they lost many of their commanders and activists, and they're in a very difficult situation. That's why they are ready to do those concessions that are asked from them by President Trump. And they are under pressure from their own supporters that fear that if they don't do these steps, then Israel is going to mount a further military move and remove them from power by force. That's in Gaza. But in the meanwhile, we also took care of many of the enemies that showed solidarity with Hamas and tried to attack us as well, like the Hezbollah in Lebanon and all kinds of militias in Iraq, and of course the Houthis in Yemen and the Iranians themselves that attacked us several times. So we weakened considerably the Iran-led axis of evil, as we call it here, and they are in a much worse shape than they were in the beginning of the war. In the beginning of the war, they thought that they have a chance to wipe Israel off the map. Now it seems that they are in a very bad shape, while Israel is gaining more and more power. I hope that all of these developments will mark the 7th of October in the memory of the Palestinians and of the Middle East as a big, big mistake, huge mistake done by those who believe that they can wipe Israel from the map. This is not going to happen, and their situation is going to be much worse. And I hope that by doing so, we shall open the door for progress towards moderation and normalization and hopefully peace in the long run between us and our neighbors.
You've spoken of the Houthis. We've recently seen a barrage of missiles being fired by the Houthis against Israel, and the escalation has taken place over the last couple of months. The Houthis claim that they're doing so in solidarity with Hamas in Gaza. So if a peace deal is chalked out and it gets implemented, do you think the Houthis will then stop targeting Israel, or will they continue doing so even after that?
Sincerely hope so. They claim that what they're doing is in solidarity with the Palestinians, so, and especially Hamas. So I hope that if Hamas reaches an agreement with Israel about the release of all the hostages and laying down their arms in Gaza, then the Houthis will follow suit and stop their attacks. That's reasonable to expect. Although nothing is reasonable when it comes to the Houthis. It's difficult to understand them.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking further updates. We're now learning that US President Donald Trump has commented on the negotiations that are taking place and the peace plan at large. He stated that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is positive on the deal. He's also said that Hamas has been agreeing to things which are very important in the plan. This development comes as reports suggest that Israeli authorities are pessimistic and that Hamas is also renegotiating a disarmament. Now, President Trump has appreciated that the deal has received a positive response from across the globe. Listen into what he had to say.
There's negotiations happening with your team in Egypt right now over your proposed peace plan. It was reported by Axios over the weekend that you had a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu where you told him to stop being so negative and to take the win when it came to Hamas's response to that. Is that true? And
no, it's not true. He's been very positive. He's been very positive on the deal. Everybody is. I think every nation is. We have just about every nation working on this deal and trying to get it done. Something that you could say 3,000 years if you look at it in certain ways, or you could say centuries, but this is a deal that incredibly everyone just came together. They all came together. No, Israel's been great. They've all been good, Caitlin.
And in the negotiations, do you have any red lines in terms of Hamas disarming and whatnot? Are there any places you're willing to negotiate?
If certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well, and I think Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important.
We've just heard Donald Trump confirm that reports that have been circulating claiming that Trump has told Netanyahu to not be negative are false. Trump has meanwhile come out and stated that Netanyahu has been striking a positive tone as far as the peace plan is concerned. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Cooper-Wasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert. Clearly, the Americans now making it clear that it's important that this deal comes through. What do you make of the tone and the tenor that Donald Trump has adopted?
Well, this is President Trump. This is what we usually hear from him. He's always optimistic and he's giving marks to everybody. So, yes, I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is really interested in moving forward with this deal. He has shown a lot of readiness to make concessions on behalf of Israel in order to reach a deal that would release all the hostages at one move. And for that, we are ready to release from jail many terrorists that were involved in murdering Israelis, many Israelis, just in order to release the hostages. But at the same time, we expect the Hamas to show readiness to not only release the hostages, but also to lay down their arms, and in order to make the way, to pave the road to a better future for Israelis and Gazans as well. That's what the deal is all about. We are ready to make our concessions in order to make it happen. And let's see if Hamas is really, as President Trump, ready to make all kinds of important moves in this direction. If this is the case, we are going to see a better future for everybody.
Speaking of Hamas, they've not yet made it clear whether they would disarm or not. In fact, they've not said anything about the proposed International Board of Peace, which would oversee post-war reconstruction of Gaza as well. However, they have supported the creation of a future technocratic Palestinian leadership. Do you then think that their silence on Trump's proposed Board of Peace and disarmament demands could emerge as a sticking point in the negotiations down the line?
Definitely, there are so many details that have to be worked out down the line, and some of the principles that were in the Trump plan that have to be translated into reality through discussion about the details are not agreed upon by Hamas too. They agreed only to 2 elements out of 20 elements that comprise the Trump plan. The rest, they didn't say anything against, but they didn't say that they approve, and which means that they do not approve, because those that they did approve, they said we approve this and this. And so we have so many open questions. They, for example, in this respect, they accepted the idea of a technocrat government that would rule Gaza once the plan comes into effect. But they are not ready to give up all their arms. So this means that these technocrats are going to be operating under the threat of Hamas. This makes no sense. And they are not ready to accept the international security or the international stabilization force, the ISF, made of foreign fighters coming from Arab and Muslim countries. They have not accepted that. As a matter of fact, some of them have spoken against it, not in the official reaction, but in all kinds of press interviews, and this creates concern that they are going to be against it. They have not spoken about the Board of Peace, not positively and not negatively, which means that they are not in favor of that. They want to see themselves involved in the future, in deciding the future of the Palestinians in Gaza and beyond, which President Trump understands that you cannot let people who were involved or actually were responsible directly for the atrocities of October 7th, you cannot let them run a state or any entity. So there are still many, many open questions that are going to be discussed down the road. But the most important thing, and this is a very important part of the logic of the plan, is that the most important and most urgent thing is to release the hostages. And the discussions right now in Sharm el-Sheikh are about the terms under which the hostages are going to be released. And let's hope that this first stage is going to be implemented, and then we shall move to discussing the rest of the issues in the plan.
All right, sir, I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some further crucial updates. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a telephonic conversation to discuss developments in the Middle East. They spoke about US President Donald Trump's plan to end the conflict in Gaza and the ongoing efforts to secure the release of hostages. Both leaders also expressed interest in negotiated solutions regarding the Iranian nuclear program. The call also covered ways to promote further stability in Syria amid regional tensions. Kremlin has stressed that the importance of diplomacy in addressing these critical issues is, of course, the need of the hour. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Yossi Cooper-Wasser. One point of focus in this discussion was Iran's nuclear program. Now, we've learned recently that the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, has in fact stated that the Cairo agreement that was inked earlier is invalid, considering the snapback mechanism that has reinstated sanctions against Iran. Where do you think then, and what mechanism and what framework would now be followed for IAEA monitoring of Iran's nuclear sites?
Well, first of all, I think really that the talk between the Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Putin dealt with Iran, and because we are concerned of the fact that the Russians say that they are not going to abide by the sanctions put forward by following the snapback of the UN sanctions that was initiated by the UK, Germany, and France. And this, the the Russians should abide by these sanctions, but they say they're not going to abide by them. So I guess Prime Minister Netanyahu was trying to convince President Putin to abide by the sanctions. By not abiding the sanctions, the Iranians are expecting the Russians to supply them with advanced weapons, and including aircraft, advanced military aircraft, and advanced anti-air and anti-missiles systems. This is not going to be allowed, or this is not allowed under the current sanctions put forward by the international community. So this is one source of concern. The other is, I guess, that the Iranians refused to allow the IAEA to inspect nuclear sites in Iran. And I think this should be a message to the Iranians by the Russians as well, not only by the West, that they should abide by their commitments to allow this inspection to go on. Because if this is not going to be the case, then who knows what they're going to do with the highly enriched uranium they have. And that's why the building of, construction of new centrifuges, all kinds of activities that have to be monitored by the international community. So I think that Russia can help with that too. But unfortunately, I don't think that this far Russians have shown any readiness to do that. And I think another topic in this discussion was also an attempt by Prime Minister Netanyahu to convince President Putin to approach the Hamas too, and convince them to show more flexibility in the talks.
All right, sir, with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time and sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World, shifting focus